The Lost Calabash. I will never forget the day young Kofi's mistake nearly tore our village apart. It was a season of plenty harvest time in Nyan Fue, when the granaries were full, and the air smelled of roasting maize and fermenting palm wine. The village square buzzed with laughter and chatter, as women pounded fufu and men told tales under the great Iroka tree. In our village, every family owned a sacred calabash, passed down through generations. These calabashes weren't just ordinary gourds. They carried the spirits of our ancestors. Some were used for libations, others for keeping medicinal herbs, and a few, like the one in Kofi's home, were said to hold secrets older than the village itself. Kofi was the last-born son of Oko Mfod, the village healer. He was a curious boy, always asking questions and poking his nose where it didn't belong. His mother's calabash had always fascinated him. It was old with intricate carvings of Adinkra symbols that no one could fully decipher. Oko Mfod never let anyone touch it, not even Kofi's older siblings. This calabash is sacred, she would say. It holds the wisdom of our ancestors. But on that fateful afternoon, when the sun hung lazily in the sky, Kofi's curiosity got the better of him. His mother had gone to the forest to gather herbs, and his siblings were busy at the river. Alone in the hut, he stared at the calabash, his fingers itching to hold it. Just one look, he whispered to himself. With hesitant hands, he reached for it. The calabash was lighter than he expected. He held it up to the light, tracing the carvings with his fingers. That's when he heard the voice. Kofi froze. He turned, but no one was there. His heart pounded against his ribs. Was it his imagination? The calabash suddenly felt heavy, as if something unseen was pressing down on it. In his panic, his grip slipped. The calabash fell to the ground and shattered. For a moment there was silence. Then a gust of wind swept through the hut, rattling the wooden rafters. The air turned thick, charged with something he couldn't explain. Kofi's breath came in short gasps as he stared at the broken pieces. Inside the calabash, nestled among the shards, was a small bundle wrapped in old, brittle cloth. His fingers trembled as he unwrapped it. Inside was a piece of parchment, yellowed with age. Strange symbols were drawn on it, along with words in an ancient script. Kofi couldn't read them, but he knew this was something important, something he was never meant to see. Before he could think, his mother's voice rang through the compound. Kofi, she stepped into the hut and saw the broken calabash. The color drained from her face. For the first time in his life, Kofi saw fear in his mother's eyes. "What have you done?" she whispered. The news spread fast. By evening, the elders had gathered in the chief's courtyard. Oko Mfod sat on the ground, her head bowed in grief. Kofi knelt beside her, unable to meet the accusing gazes of the villagers. Nana Kwaku, the oldest man in the village, held up the parchment. His voice was heavy with sorrow. This was not just any calabash. It held the last will of our ancestors, a record of our true origins. Without it, we have lost a piece of ourselves. The villagers murmured, some shook their heads. Others glared at Kofi. "What do we do now?" someone asked.